Good morning, class 12. This is Suman Avasthi, your teacher of English. The poem My Mother at 66, written by Kamla Das. Driving from my parents' home to Cochin last Friday morning, I saw my mother beside me, doors open mouthed, her face ashen like that of a corpse, and realized with pain that she was as old as she looked, but soon put that thought away. So the poetess Kamla Das, she recalls a trip. It was a Friday morning and she was driving with her mother next to her. Driving from my parents' home to Cochin, it is a metaphor of journey. The word driving is a metaphor of journey as experience. The poet says that she was observing her mother who had fallen asleep with her mouth slightly open. The mother's face was pale and it reminded her of the white faces of the dead bodies. It is then that she realizes that her mother was not young any longer and that her appearance had caught up with her age. This was very hard for the poet to accept, and so she tries to focus her attention on something else. Her face ashen like that of a corpse. Here, the poetic device used is simile. The poet compares the mother's face with that of a dead body. Imagery has also been used here. Here is an unpleasant image because it reminds the daughter that the mother is growing old. She describes her mother's aging face and her reaction to it. Without a bit of hesitation, she compares it to that of a corpse, a dead body. She puts that thought away. Here, the poet expresses the pain of helplessness. She expresses the pain of guilt. Why guilt? Because she cannot stay with her mother when the mother is in need of her. She describes the fear of the process of aging of her mother, and this disturbs her so much that she is forced to turn her attention away. Now, children, yesterday also I had told you that this turning away doesn't mean that she is turning away from her responsibilities towards her mother, but is turning away from her own pain filled emotions. The line, put that thought away, that thought, alliteration, poetic device used is alliteration. And looked out at young trees sprinting, the merry children spilling out of their homes. But after the airport security check, standing a few yards away, I looked at her, wan, pale. Here the poet says that she turned her thoughts away from her aging mother and decided to look out of the window. Outside her eyes caught the sight of the trees that the vehicle was passing by. The car was moving so fast that, by the way of relative motion, it seemed to the poet that the trees were also running at full speed. The trees seemed to be quite youthful. The poet's eyes also caught the sight of the children who were coming out of their homes, brimming over with excitement to get outside. The poet passed all these sights and then she reached the airport. Till then, her mind was totally distracted. After the security check, she was standing at a short distance away from her mother, and again she looked at her mother. Just as before, she appeared very pale. The poetic device used here is imagery. She sees the trees small, young, sprinting. Sprinting means running. She also sees the children happily moving out of their homes. Personification is also used here. The trees are personified. Then she says, she looked at her mother. I looked again at her, wan, pale as a late winter's moon, and felt that old familiar ache, my childhood's fear. But all I said was, see you soon, Amma. And all I did was smile and smile and smile. Here I looked at her as a late winter's moon. The poet tries to say that even though her mother is no longer a young woman, she is still beautiful because now she doesn't compare her face to a dead body's face. She compares it with that of a moon on a winter night. Here, the image is not unpleasant, but it is pleasant. See, you can recall the other image also. Both images, like face ashen like that of a corpse, and her wan pale face as a late winter's moon, are used to show the end of something. Corpse tells us about the human life coming to an end, and winter tells us about the end of an year. One more year that a person has lived and is drawing closer to the end of life. The two images symbolize the same thing. What is that? What does it symbolize? The brevity of life and the certainty of death. This is very important. Now, here the poet compares her mother's face with the moon on a night towards the end of winter. This made her see all the things she had been most afraid of during her childhood. She says, I remembered that fear, the fear that her mother would die one day. This fear had haunted her many times before, and it was again now haunting her. But she did not let that fear show itself on her face. So, what did she do? Instead, she put up a brave face and waved goodbye to her mother. And what did she say? She assured her mother that the two would be seeing each other soon. All the while, she was in great pain, but she smiles and bids goodbye. The poet here has used the visual imagery. The poetic device used here is imagery, which is visual. Here again, we can see the poet smiling, trying to hide her emotions. As a child of her mother, she feels powerless, but as an adult, she is strong. But where death is concerned, she cannot do anything about it. So she is determined not to dishearten her mother. So she smiles and says goodbye. Here she feels her heart breaking and covering up of her pain. I hope, children, you have understood the poem. See, children, trees and happy children are symbols of youth, activity, vitality, life, and growth. Children, I hope you must have understood what I had explained. Thank you. Have a good day.